winning hearts with storytelling. Today I'm talking to Yingdan Liu. Hi, I'm Monika Hutnik, and I help leaders learn how to lead their international and virtual teams. Together with my team at ASA Go Global, we make the change happen by means of training, coaching, facilitation, masterminds, action learning, and any other ways. This podcast, A Step Ahead, has been created for all who want to grow in such an international, remote environment, who want to grow as leaders, HR, change agents, and simply as humans. I'm inviting you here for discoveries and insights. All recordings and materials are available at www.astepahead.pro. When you think about storytelling and business, there is a question how you can combine these two areas. Let me tell you, the connection is just amazing and fascinating. It's very, very, very strong. And I have a great guest who can tell us more about how it works, what it is, and why it is so important to have storytelling skills, especially when you are a leader. My guest works in the area of leadership, communication, obviously also storytelling. She is also a cross-cultural trainer, facilitator, and coach, and brings an amazing international experience into this conversation. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Yingdan. Nice to meet all of you through Monika's podcast.
I'm so glad that you are here. And I was so fascinated when we had this conversation about storytelling. So what brought you in this area? You are certainly an expert, and you actually wrote books about storytelling.
This is a very good question. This is what I want to share with all of your audience today. Before I start to share how I got into the field of storytelling, I would like to say a little bit about myself, like my name and where I grew up, I think, and then your audience will get to know me a little bit better, and then I will share with you how I get into the field of storytelling. Is that okay?
This already sounds like a promise of a little story.
A little bit. Maybe I start with the story of my name. You know, as I mentioned, my name is Yingdan. That's my given name. My surname is Liu, so it's a Chinese name. So when foreigners heard my name, you cannot pronounce it. But if I tell you the meaning of my name, probably you will remember my name better. Ying, Y-I-N-G, is the character my dad gave it to me when I was born. It means intelligent, smart in Chinese. And my mom also gave me a character because they two are pretty equal. So each one of them gave me one character. So she gave me the character Dan. It means a flower, a peony. In Chinese, it's a very beautiful, it's our national flower. So because she wanted her daughter to be beautiful in the future. So my name Yingdan actually means both intelligent and beautiful. So that's me.
That's such a great start. I love that. And I find so much meaning in the story of a name. That's something which I only started discovering after I got in this intercultural area. And I think it was the first time when somebody asked, so what's in your name? And I thought, nothing. But that's not true. After working in this intercultural area for so many years, I learned many things about my name and a story of my name. But today, I don't want to take the stage. I really want to give the stage to you. So please tell us about yourself. What brought you into this area?
What I am doing right now is as you mentioned, I focus on the communication and leadership development. I'm a trainer and coach and facilitator. And I have done this for the past 13 years. And before that, I worked in college as a teacher. And also I worked in an American company as a customer service representative. As a customer service representative. So I have over 20 years of working experience. And it comes to the middle of my career journey at that time, I was thinking about, should I like start my own company? Should I pursue a career really I like? At that moment, I met a person. His name is Craig Valentine, and he's black, and he is the champion of a world champion of public speaking of Toastmasters International. So yeah, I remember like he went to China, maybe that's year of 2009, and he delivered a keynote speech for like over 500 people. And I was one of the audience. And I still remember one story he taught on the stage. He was talking about like he wanted to become a professional speaker, but his boss offered him a salary increase in order to keep him. So he was in a dilemma. What shall he do? And so he went back home and discussed with his wife. And his wife said, "Your dream is not for sale."
That's
sentence,
strong. That's strong.
Yeah, that was a very strong message. That message struck a chord with me. I was like sitting in the crowd of 500 people. I was like, wow, that's it. So, his story, he told me that story. That was like in 2009. It's like almost 15 years ago. I still remember his message. So his story inspired me because I was in the similar dilemma at that time. Like, oh, shall I quit from my job? And because I also found my passion in training, and shall I start my own training company at the moment? And his story inspired me. And so I started my own training and coaching business like 1 year later, and focus on communication, leadership, and storytelling is one key tool, both for a good communicator and for a good leader. So that's how I get involved in the storytelling field.
By the way, when you shared this story, which made such a big impact on me, I already had shivers down my spine. I noticed little tears in my eyes, and I think it already left an impact on me too. I just need to consider what it means. That's a strong message. So, absolutely, there is no doubt that stories really matter and that they really have a huge impact on us. Is this the reason why you also decided to write a book about storytelling?
Wow, that's a good question. Let me show you my book first. Yeah, this is my book in Chinese. It was published in 2022. The literal translation of the title is "Winning Hearts Through Storytelling." Yeah. The reason why I started to write this book, I think, okay, I would like to share you a short story behind that. Yeah. It's dated back to the February 2020, when the COVID just started. The first wave of COVID just started. And at the time, we were all locked down, just in our home. And I remember like one night, my daughter already went to sleep. I was sitting in the living room and with dim lights, and I was watching the news from TV and with very low volume because I don't want to wake up my daughter. And I was listening to the news like, oh, how many people died today? And there were some like numbers from each city. And I was thinking that question. I was not sure about the future. Maybe next day or next month, something happened to our family. And I was asking me, what do I want to leave behind in this world? And then an idea just came to my mind, write a book. Because I had thought about writing a book in the past few years, but I didn't really put into action. Lots of excuses, so busy at work, lots of training I had to do. So I didn't start to take action. By that time, I have time every day. I was locked down at home. Why not start it now? So that's how and when I decided to write the book. And the topic storytelling just come to my mind. Yeah, this is the area I had been studying For several years, I had been training and coaching lots of professionals about storytelling, have a lots of cases, how I coach them. So why not just write a book about storytelling? So I made mine in February of 2020. And then I finished the book within a few months, and I talked with a publisher in China, and then finally went public in 2022.
Congratulations. And I'm really inspired by the title, Winning Hearts Through Storytelling. I believe so. I run courses, trainings for leaders, for international leaders. And among various leadership skills that the participants learn, there is also the skill of communicating with impact, of motivating people, of inspiring through communication. And this is precisely the module when we also talk about storytelling. But it seems not to be obvious to many people who have not come across this theme in a little bit more detail. So how do you see how it combines in business? Why is storytelling so adequate in business?
Now, that's a wonderful question. I totally understand the myth about why storytelling in business world, because I met lots of especially engineers, people from those, the technical background. They said, we only talk about numbers, figures, logic. Why telling stories? Stories are not that professional. I've heard this kind of statements before. So I'd like to run a test with you first. And then you will understand, I believe, your audience who are listening to the podcast will also understand. So let's imagine you are in an exhibition, in a big exhibition, and there are some charity organizations. They have some stands, the booth there. They were promoting their charity cause. They want you to donate some money. So there are two different booths, and they are doing two different presentations. So I would like to invite you to listen to the both presentation, and then you let me know. So you're more willing to donate to which booth. Is it okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So the first one, come up with a slide. Do you want to see the slide?
We can, if you like, but you can also just talk about that as we will be, using it as a podcast.
Okay. So the first booth, there was a slide with bullet points with some figures there. So I'm going to share with you what's on the slide. Food shortage in Malawi, which is a place in Africa, are affecting more than 3 million children. In Zambia, several rainfall deficits have resulted in a 42% drop in maize production from 2000. An estimated 3 million Zambians face hunger. 4 million Angolans, 1/3 of the population, have been forced to flee their homes. More than 11 million people in Ethiopia need immediate food assistance. So please donate to help them. So this is the first booth. Okay, in the second booth, the staff is telling you this. And there is a picture of a black girl who is 7 years old. Rakia is a 7-year-old girl who lives in Mali in Africa. She is desperately poor and faces a threat of severe hunger, even starvation. Any money that you donate will go to Rakia. Her life will be changed for the better as a result of your financial gift. With your support and the support of other caring sponsors, Save the Children will work with Rakia's family and other members of the community to help feed and educate her and provide her with the basic medical care. Please donate to help Rakia. So there are two different types of presentation. So which one are you be more willing to donate?
The first one invited my intellectual brain to process all the data, and I was trying to imagine the scale which is behind the numbers. But the one where my heart started being involved was the second one. Yes, and especially this statement, any money you donate will change your future.
Yes. So that's, you can see the two different types of representation. We can see the first one with the bullet points, figures is very common in the professional arena. Many people deliver the presentation. They're trying to persuade either the boss to approve a project or persuade their colleagues, their clients to buy the product or service. We're all using similar type of presentation. So actually, this is a research conducted by Deborah Small. When she conducted this research, she was professor in Wharton Business School, and with two other colleagues. So they were running a research. She said they recruited students to join their program. They said, "Oh, if you fill in the survey, I'm going to give you money." So everybody will get $5 after they fill in a survey. That survey was not important at all. What's important is after, because they received envelope. Inside the envelope, there is a letter and also $5. And then when they open the envelope, they read the letter. So half of them get the letter of all the figures, and half of them get letter with the picture of Rakia and then the story of Rakia. And they will compare the result. So who will donate more, right? So the result is, on average, people who read the fact-based letter donated $1.14. However, the people who read the story about Rakia donated an average of $2.38.
Twice as much, almost twice as much. Mm-hmm.
So this research shows us, if you want people to donate, you need to appeal their heart. So this is, of course, you say this is about donation, right? But it's actually about persuasion. Persuasion, I believe it happens in all different kinds of scenarios at our work. Like, for example, for a job interview, we want to persuade the HR to recruit us. Like in your report to your boss, or maybe you want to persuade your boss to approve the resource which will support your project. Or if we talk with our client, potential client, we want to persuade them to choose our product or service. So it's all about persuasion. So if we want to truly persuade people, we shall tell stories.
Absolutely. I fully agree with you. And with my groups, we frequently come into a discussion, and some of my leader participants say, okay, but do we always need to disclose a personal element, like my personal life with a story? Or do we always need to be so emotional when we say a story? Leaders have some doubts about, they are so intrigued by the power of story, by the impact that it can make. And at the same time, they wonder how to do it. So could you please tell us, what is effective storytelling? What does it need to consist of? What are the necessary elements of a story?
I think a good story should be both logical and emotional. As you mentioned, like some people doubt about the emotional part. Do we need to be that emotional? Of course, you don't need to achieve the emotional level like in the movie. However, people make decisions not only because of the logic, but more because of the emotion. So this is backed up by a neuroscience study by Paul Zak. I'm not sure whether you heard about him. He did lots of neuroscience research, and his research showed us that when people are listening to stories, and their brain will release oxytocin. Oxytocin makes people feel more trustworthy and more compassionate and more willing to collaborate and be more generous. So if we want to persuade people to collaborate with us, we tell stories, and it will be easier for you to achieve your purpose. That's why I think a good story should be both logical and emotional.
That's a very important aspect, because some leaders say, yes, but stories are just so, emotional and, implying that they are fluffy. Yes, that there is no content within. But I would agree with you that a good story needs to have both. If we only have data, it's very dry. There is no emotional connection. The data, it's an increasing trend in the industry everywhere. The data needs to be able to tell a story, yes, and a story has this emotional component. I would like to highlight that too, absolutely.
And comes back to the topic about both logical and emotional and how to achieve that. So I may start with how to get a clear structure first, and then we will talk about how we can build emotional connection with your audience. Is that okay?
Absolutely. I love that.
So for clear structure, sometimes people didn't tell good story because they put too much detail into the story, which bored people. Or they didn't find the theme in their story. So they have lots of here and there, but didn't have a clear theme there. So that's another problem. So if you could use a clear structure to organize your story, then you can cut all those unnecessary parts. You only highlight the most important thing, which will be easier to be absorbed by your audience. So a clear structure is very important. So I come up with the 5S structure. So, but I think all the playwriters, authors, they have different models. So mine is more for business people, for professionals, because we don't need to tell very, very long story like a movie, like drama, right? Maybe only 3 minutes. Yeah. So the 5S, the first is start. So you need to tell your audience what is the start of your story, dating back to when, if you share a successful case, so this is the client approach me in which year. And so this is a very, very quick beginning of your story, when and where the story happened, what they were doing. And second is most important thing is struggle, because what attracts people's attention is the conflict, which creates the tension. So when you were doing your thing, what difficulty you encountered, and people will stand in your shoes, start to wonder, oh, how would you solve that, right? So conflict creates tension, which is important, is a struggle, second part. And the third part is solve. So how you solve your problem, how you solve the difficulty. And this gives people inspiration. Usually it comes with mindset shift, it comes with your action you take, or it comes with your creativity, right? So this will give people inspiration. Oh, they can solve the similar problem, or they have trust in you. You can help them solve their problem, right? Because if you are selling your own service. And the fourth one is result. So this word didn't start with the S, but it has an S in the middle, the result. Yes, because result, then this is the section you can put your figures there, because you can use the figure as a testimonial for yourself. How you achieved a very good result through your solution. So here is the key. You don't need to share with your audience lots of figures. Only the most important one with bang. Oh, they were impressed, right? And last but not least is your standpoint, which is the key message of your story. What do you want to tell your audience? If it's an inspirational story, you can come up with a message which inspire people, like what I talk about, Craig Valentine's story, your dream is not for sale. But if it's like you're sharing your successful case with a potential client, you want your potential client have confidence in you, you could just borrow a sentence from your past client, how they complimented you as your standpoint in the end. So this is the way how you select your standpoint in order to persuade your potential audience. So this 5S structure will give people a simple framework to design your narrative. Okay, start, struggle, solve, result, and standpoint. So you just follow these 5 steps is easier. You won't put them too many details and become like beating the bush.
Yes.
You don't, yeah, you don't need to, you won't lose your audience. So some tips here. So the start of the story, keep it as short as possible. We need to come up with the second part, the struggle, as early as possible, because people will be attracted by the tension, some like crime scene drama, they may start with the conflict, there is a crime scene, somebody died. Maybe the first scene of the drama would be like that. And then what happened? Who killed this person? And then they will date it back to the start, this also means these 5S, it doesn't necessarily to be this order. You can change. You can also start with the struggle and then introduce the background of the story and then how you solve that. What are the results and what is the standpoint? Or you can even start with the result, especially when we are doing report to our boss. For example, I know many professionals need to do like monthly or quarterly performance report to the boss, like what I did in the past month, right? We can start with the wonderful result. And then your boss will be attracted. Wow, that's a pretty good result. And then you can tell your boss how you achieved that. And then your boss will be willing to listen to your story, how you achieved that. So this 5S structure could be very flexible. You can decide which S to be put in the first place. And then as long as you cover all these 5S, and then that's a complete and concise story.
I love that. It seems to be very smooth, very logical. And it seems to be realistic to put all of this into 3 minutes, for example. And I'm also confirming what I always thought before. It also requires to be well thought through in advance and well prepared. And I think this is one of the very frequent mistakes which I observe when we talk about storytelling. Many people imagine that when somebody is a storyteller, this is a kind of a natural gift. Maybe, but I think in the vast majority of cases, it is rather a well-prepared and a well-trained skill where the speaker really is clear about what point he or she wants to make.
I can share with you a story about one CEO I coach. Because many people say, oh, storytelling is gift, is like a talent. You're born with that talent. No, it is a skill which can be learned. So that's why I want to share with you a story about a CEO I coached. I think that's in 2015. That's a Chinese CEO in an educational organization. He had about 300 employees at that time. So he came to me and he wanted me to coach him for his upcoming speech in his corporate annual town hall meeting. So all his employees would attend that meeting. So the previous year, his speech was a disaster. He wrote a speech and he was too nervous on the stage and he forgot his line. And he had a long pause and his employees waited and then applauded him to give him encouragement. And he felt so embarrassed and frustrated because his original intention was to inspire his employees. While in the end, ironically, he received encouragement from his employees. And that's why he approached me and he didn't want to repeat his disaster. So I suggest him use storytelling because you don't need to remember your lines as long as you know your story. So after discussion with him, and he came up with 3 stories, one about his client, one story about his employee, and one story about his vision for next year. And also I asked him to rehearse many times in front of me, gave him feedback until he feel confident and fluent on the stage. So at that night, after he completed his speech in his annual conference meeting, he texted me with excitement. He said, wow, my speech was a great success. He got standing ovation from his employees. And after he finished like his 10 to 15 minutes speech, it's 3 stories. Yeah. So from there on, he embraced public speaking, because he totally enjoyed telling story to others. So he took more public speaking opportunities to represent his company, to speak on like industrial conferences like that. And he even wrote a long testimonial for me because he wanted to encourage more business leaders to tell stories. Yeah, just like the same message to all your audience who are listening to this podcast. Embrace storytelling in your business scenario.
Absolutely. I love this example. And I think many leaders are so good in talking to people, and they know how to be engaging on a personal level. They know how to be, compelling, inspiring. But when the additional level of this public speaking comes to play, sometimes, or many of them get very tense. This is what we have trained as trainers. We are used to many eyes watching every movement that we make. But it seems not to be a natural skill for many people. So I agree with you, rehearsal, but with a good story at the back of your head. That's the point. So what are some of the common misunderstandings around storytelling? I already mentioned one, that it's, fluffy and emotional. I think we face that. Is there any other, doubts that you come across that people share with you? Maybe we can just, address some of them here.
I think the first one, I don't have stories to tell. My life, it's so normal. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, that's the one that I am using so frequently.
I have the same misunderstanding before I started to learn storytelling, because I thought, I was just average person. No, I didn't experience like major events. I was not successful. I didn't experience major setback, like the threat of the death or serious disease. So I don't have stories to tell.
Yes, I haven't almost been eaten by a lion. So what shall I talk about?
Yeah. But after I learned about storytelling, and after I tried storytelling in my own life, I realized that as long as you feel that experience is meaningful for you, it could be designed into a good story. For example, I joined Toastmasters in 2004. I started to compete like in 2013, and I won China's champion in Toastmasters public speaking contest in 2014. At the time, I was telling a story about the conflict between me and my mother-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
No, in Asian culture, it's a very common conflict. I'm not sure how about in Europe.
I think it's a universal area of tensions.
Yes. So it's not like a major event. It's just like a conflict, wife with the mother-in-law. And I was talking about, my mother-in-law was a perfectionist. She was so picking on me. And no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't reach I couldn't meet her standard. And I started to complain about that. And then also the conflict between me and my mother-in-law escalated into between me and my husband. And at that moment, I realized I had to change. And then one small incident happened is like my mother-in-law, she had like severe cold. One time she was coughing so much and she wanted to cut her toenails one day. And she was sitting on the sofa, but she just couldn't barely make it. And at that moment, I just, okay, let me help her. So I just knelt down. I took over her nail clipper and help her cut her toenails. And that small action totally changed our relationship. And she was become suddenly much nicer to me and totally accepted me. And I felt the love between us. She was after that, she still gave me some suggestions, but it's not like criticism. It's more of like, I say, a sandwich style. She would compliment first and give me suggestion and give me encouragement. So I shared that story in my speech contest in 2014. And the message is the power of change is love. because we always want to change others, but actually the power of change is love. And I remember I delivered that speech in 2014. Like even in 2022, 23, some people still approach me and say, "Oh, Yingdan, I listened to your story about you and the mother-in-law, and can you share with me the video link?" Because my friend had a similar problem. I want to forward your speech to him or her. So it's very it's very interesting. Just one story I told, which is like 10 years ago, and people still remember.
That's amazing. I really love that. Yes, and I think it's really about what sense you make out of the story. Yes, the kind of a conclusion, the little reflection that you are drawing out of it. In a way, a story is just a story, but the real key to a powerful story is what sense you make of it.
Yes, this also comes to my other point. I think storytelling is not only good for persuading others, but also help you discover yourself. Because sometimes things happen to us. We didn't sit down and reflect what meaning I get from this incident or this experience, and what growth I get from this experience. So you asking about the misunderstanding. I talk about everybody, you will have some story elements. You have some good elements, and you just need to use the storytelling skill to craft your story. But your question also let me think of another thing about self-discovery. So the story is not only about persuading others, because we need to internalize what happened to us. You connect the dots. You can discover the true self, like what you're really passionate about, what are your strengths, what are your values. And when you are certain about the meaning of the story to yourself, then you will be able to tell the story to others. So self-discovery is also a very important thing for us. So even though it's not about misunderstanding, I think this is about something people are not aware at this moment.
Yes, I would agree with you so much. I remember a colleague who I had in my work when I was a junior trainer, junior consultant in a large company. I think he was 30 years older than myself. And he rarely offered advice, but he frequently offered stories. And sometimes, in the beginning, I was a bit puzzled. What does he mean? And then I understood that by sharing the story, he not only gives me the most precious gift of, disclosing himself and caring about our relationship, but also that he lets me find my own solution basing on his discovery. I was so impressed, and actually his example helps me consider myself as worthy enough to share stories to people. Nowadays, when I'm also older than some others, sometimes I think, aren't stories the core of mentorship? The core of relationship building, the core of learning from other people. We say that 20% of learning comes from, is this social learning, yes, learning from other people. How much of it comes through stories, yes, through the real experience that somebody shares with us. I love that. And the story that we tell about ourselves. Now, so many people suffer from mental health challenges, yes? And the question is, what is the story that you are telling about yourself? Are you a victim of depression, or are you the winner because you're able to function day by day, yes? That's a very important narrative. I fully agree with you.
I like your summary. And also, I would like to share with you one sentence I always share with my audience. That the words you speak to yourself determine the kind of a person you become. And the words you speak to others determine the kind of people you attract.
That's very interesting. I love that too. And I'm so curious. You actually wrote a book when you were in China, but now you are in the US. How do you see the storytelling in these two countries? Are there similarities, differences? Is the, how to say, validity of stories different across cultures?
I would say stories are important and well received both in US and in China. So this is a universal thing. It's a universal tool. However, the key messages or the standpoints you want to convey through your stories could be different based on the culture of the audience. So for example, like in US, if you watch the US movie, it's more of like hero, right? It's more individualistic. So it's like one hero saved the world.
A Superman, yes, it's a classical example. A superhero.
Yes, superhero, Spider-Man, there are lots of men. Yeah. Like in China, like in more Asian culture, it's more collectivism. So there are more stories about you sacrifice for the well-being of the group, or the one group achieved success. So when you are telling stories across culture, you need to pay attention to the culture of your audience. So you may come up with different standpoints to convey. So this is, I think, the cross-culture thing there. And also, when we are telling stories, if, for example, if my story, I talking about growing up in China, if I mention the names of the city, but people in US may not understand, then we need to try to help your target audience understand your context. So maybe use some metaphor, or you, for example, you say a distance between where one city to another city. You can just use the names of the your target audience, the city they are familiar with. So this is something we need to be aware. Like when we talk about the context of the story or the scenario in the story, just make sure your target audience can understand.
And I also have experienced stories and storytelling as a powerful tool of connecting across cultures. Because just as you said, despite some cultural differences, there are some common themes that all of us face, like the relationship with the mother-in-law, or many challenges that we have in life, yes? And when you realize that the people from the other country, the other maybe even continent, the other place in the world, actually they face the same challenges and they have a story to share and they want to share a story with you. I think this is such a powerful tool for, building bridges across cultures, much more powerful than the numbers, than the numbers that we want to use for, convincing about connections and economy.
Yeah, when I was young, I read lots of Andersen's fairy tales and also Grimm's fairy tales. They were from Europe, but it's very popular all over the world, like Cinderella, Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, like Little Red Riding Hood, and also The Ugly Duckling. So stories are universal. Yeah, it can connect with people from different cultures, and it's a great tool.
What do you think might come in the future? Do you think this artificial intelligence technology can really impact the way stories are told?
I would say the artificial intelligence will enhance the importance of storytelling. I'm not sure whether you've read the news about Sora. It's from OpenAI. Is that you just write a story, it will create the video for you. It's not officially launched yet. It's only have the beta version, but it's a wonderful tool. So in the future, as long as you can design stories, the technology won't be difficult for you because the technology will be accessible for everybody. So your idea is more important than the technology, because you simply use the Sora and Sora will help you create a video. But the idea is more important. If you don't have the capability to design a story, you won't be able to use those technology to enhance your career. And also with the popularity of the short videos. Nowadays, different countries have a different app, and the short video is very popular. And our personal branding become more important. You could have lots of followers, become a KOL if you are able to tell your story to others. So personal branding and also the branding for the company, corporations are also very important. And then that's why I say the future technology will enhance the importance of storytelling.
But first, you need yourself to be aware what kind of story you want to say. Yes, what did this story mean to you in your life? Yes, how can it be impactful to others? So we cannot hope the artificial intelligence will take this away from
No,
us. I
because
don't think.
yeah, artificial intelligence doesn't know you. You need to come up with elements like they can help you craft your language. That could be a good thing. Like for example, if you want to build emotional connection with the audience, you can send your draft story. For example, you send it to you send to ChatGPT. You say, I want to increase the emotional connection with the audience. Can you help me revise my language? It might help you. This is one thing like comes up to the question we talked about before. We talked about clear structure, but I forgot to talk about emotional connection. Yeah, which is like you can add some of the feeling words into your story, or you can describe the scene, like what you were experiencing at that time. For example, what you hear, what you see, how did you feel? Then your audience would be able to stand in your shoes and experiencing your life at that particular moment. So this is the way to build emotional connection. Well, you can use ChatGPT to help you revise your script, but you need to come up with the essence, like what values you want to convey, what are the elements of the story.
That's very interesting. This makes me think that emotions are our physical states of bodies. Yes, so it might be a connecting via emotion or by describing the physical environment that we can also relate to. That's really interesting. I really love the idea of winning hearts through storytelling. Now, how would you like to close our conversation? What is the key message that you want to leave us with?
I would like to encourage everybody who is listening to this audio, just start to tell stories. No, you don't need to be perfect in the first place. So after you came up with your story and then you tried it, and then you can revise it, you can modify it until you feel very, very confident about the story. So good stories needs polishment. So my advice is just start to tell a story by using the 5S structure. And then you will start to build your story database. And then you will be more observant about things happening to you. And actually today, the examples I shared were all about in business world. And for me, actually, I also use storytelling with my daughter. Is I tell my daughter stories based her own experience and designing the story to highlight her strength and to teach her values. So it's bedtime stories. My daughter will say, Mom, tell me a story about myself when I'm younger. She's 6 years old. I'm telling her stories like happened when she's 2 or when she was 4. She was so excited about her own story because she would remember her strength. Because whenever I observe her strength or her growth, I would design that experience into a story and I share with her during her bedtime. Like when she was 2 years old, like one story she liked very much is like about, I call it ice cream story. When she was 2 years old, she wanted to eat ice cream, but she was too little. She couldn't reach the door of the refrigerator. She couldn't open it by herself. And she came to me, Mom, I want to eat ice cream. Can you get ice cream for me? And one day I said, darling, use your creativity. See whether you can solve the problem by yourself. And she just looked around the house and she found her stool. So she brought her stool and put it in front of the refrigerator. She stepped on it and opened the door of the refrigerator. She got the ice cream by herself for the first time. And then I told the story to her in the bedtime and say, wow, darling, you are a person with creativity to solve your problem. So I add the key message at the end she would remember, oh, I'm a creative girl. I could solve my own problem. So this is the one value she learned through her own growth. So I have like different stories, ice cream story, like a fear story or falling down story. So whenever she had some those kind of experience, I would design a story. So yeah, the final takeaway to your audience is start to tell stories. And then you will find the power of storytelling through your own experience.
Thank you so much, Yingdan.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
When my son was born, my business was already in full speed, and it was really a challenge to manage it all together. We moved flats, my son went to the kindergarten, and I took my minutes of peace and quiet by taking a little bit longer route from the kindergarten to my office. I cherished this time not only by watching the beautiful nature on the way, but also by listening to podcasts. And I enjoyed it so much to get the wisdom and stories from other people who might have been running a small business like me or facing other challenges they had. At that time, I didn't even imagine I would ever do something like this myself. But a few years later, I realized that there is so much to share and that I might want to run a podcast myself. But the decision wasn't simple at all. What I didn't want above all was to create a few episodes and then stop. I took all my conscience to think how to make it sustainable. I also was considering which language I should decide on. Shall I run the podcast in English, as many of my clients are solely or mostly English speaking, or maybe in Polish, the other large group of my clients are Polish speakers. And this consideration took me 2 years. I reached a turning point when I promised to myself to never put pressure on me creating a podcast. Just to do it for pleasure, fun, and purpose. And that's what I'm doing. 5 years later, I am reaching my 100th episode in Polish, and the number of my episodes in English is growing, with the number of downloads exceeding tens of thousands. And I'm still enjoying what I'm doing. Above all, creating value for other people that might learn from the stories that we share, plus with my personal pleasure of meeting amazing guests just like Yingdan Liu. Well, this was an attempt of creating a little story on the go. I hope you liked it. And if you like to check the notes to the episode on storytelling, please go to astepahead.pro016 is the exact address where you will find also the link to Yingdan Liu and the notes to this episode. And I'm also gladly recommending you a few other episodes in this series. For example, this very good conversation with Kasper Jelspech from Denmark on 7 steps to creating successful DEI change, a very well thought over and systematic approach to implementing DEI as a reasonable solution in your company. Episode number 15, or another one from the group of cross-cultural episodes, the one on Egypt, the joy of relationships, where we certainly also talk about stories, and my guest Jana Holla, who has been living in Egypt for more than 15 or 20 years now, and is a Slovakian herself, is sharing plenty of stories on Egyptians and the Egyptian culture, including business culture, episode number 10. If you are a Polish speaker, you might also check my channel, which is called O Krok do Przodu. For example, the episode on how to speak 10 languages, which, by the way, is also coming up in English soon. The episode okrokdoprzodu.pl/068. Serdecznie polecam. Thanks so much for being together. I hope you enjoyed. If you want to help me pursue my mission of sharing valuable content with amazing audience, please do leave a note of recommendation in any channel that you are using. Thank you so much.